Hello, welcome to another episode of Bro to Pro. We're back in the shop on a beautiful Tuesday
Can you
evening.
make like a little tune like Bro to Pro? This is Bro to Pro. Welcome back. Yeah, that was good, right?
Right now, I'm actually going to work on cleaning up kind of like the last bit of the engine bay for clearance stuff. And what that is the steering column that I'm going to be messing with. So right here I have the stock steering column, and I have an aftermarket one. This is an aftermarket steering column that you can piece together. I purchased this actually a while back. Before I even had this car, I purchased it for my VQ car when I relocated the steering rack forward. I wanted to do an extended steering column so I could fit it, because when you move it forward, the steering column has to extend. I needed that. I ended up just cutting and welding the stock one. But I have this here, and this is going like a full-blown race car now. So I'm gonna make it nice, and I'm gonna replace the steering column with this aftermarket one that bolts up, and you weld it and cut it perfectly into shape, and it's like super nice. So this is the stock steering column that was kind of taken apart, and it was welded, and it's ideal position. It's pretty good position, but it just kind of haggard, and I'm not a fan of it. I have my old digital dash mount that I'm going to probably just cut off to sell to someone else, and then this energy hub that is like stuck to this. I tried everything I could do to get it off. Yes, the nut's actually off of it, but it just pressed on there, can't get it off. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut the stock steering column out, remove the bolts, and then kind of remove everything, and then start mocking up where I'm going to fit the rest of it. So I got the interior side of this cut out. What I'm gonna have to do is I'm actually gonna have to grind all these down like super nice, so that way my clamp can fit on there. So I'm gonna cut in there, but it was really hard to get in there with the steering column in the way. So I cut as much of it as I could away. Now I'm just gonna have to grind against those welds and then finish it up with the probably like flap wheel or something like that. Get a nice surface finish on this so that way it'll mount properly. So now that's up. You could see based on like how that was barely hanging on. So what you're supposed to do when you relocate your rack forward is you have to extend the steering column pretty much about the same length. So what you do is you cut it here and usually sleeve it, and then extend a little bit inside that, probably like 1 inch, and then weld on either side to extend that. So instead of doing that, the guy before me just had it hanging on, so the steering column was barely hanging on to the splines there, so it wasn't really getting a good hold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend it properly with the new steering column, so you'll have a full hold on your steering rack, so you don't lose an entire steering column mid-run and crash your car. This is the entirety of the steering column all pulled out. What I'm actually going to do is cut this right about here and remove this portion of this. What I'll do is I'll take that. This part will then be inserted into the end of this, and since they are roughly the same diameter, I'll probably have to just either mill that down a tiny bit or open this up a little bit. It'll fit there axially, so this will be on the same axis as this, and then I'll just weld a bead around that, and then that way I'll have the very nice splines so I can attach my old steering joint to this, and then the upper joint is a new joint that goes on, which will replace this one right here. And this will be all welded in nicely, and then the rest of it will go in the car. I ground all the welds off and then ended up hitting it with the flappy wheel, so it's pretty much uniform. You can see some grinder marks and stuff, but for the most part, it is back to the same old pipe it was before. So the part for the steering column is actually right here. It's a machined aluminum piece with a spherical bearing in there, so the steering column goes through there, goes down to the steering column hole right there, which is replaced with this spherical bearing. Has set screws in it so I can adjust how far up it goes. And the only thing about this is this cage in here is a 1.75 inch cage, where pretty much everything made for roll cages is 1.5 inches. So I actually had to machine out the inside of this about 1/8 of an inch So that would fit the 175 tubing. New steering column point is mounted up. So now we put the steering shaft through there, and now I just have to measure it up and get the height right. That way it doesn't contact this, and I get it measured up to where my seating position is going to be so I can cut everything to length. This is the plate that goes on to the interface on the firewall here. So it blocks off the firewall and is the spherical bearing between there. The issue with this is that there's a lip here from the old firewall, like gasket almost. So I gotta cut that out and then cut out the spots for the bolts to fit through, so this will mount flush to this place. And while I have this out, I think I'm actually just gonna paint it because it has a little bit of like kind of like surface rust almost, because it's been sitting probably close to 2 years now. So here I have the plate with the spherical bearing in there. Is I'm going to tack the bolts on this plate here. This is the engine side. So this will bolt up against the firewall. That way I don't have to get a wrench on the other side, just like how I did on the AccuSum. This will be a little harder to get to, so it's actually going to be very beneficial for me to have the tack on there. That should be way more than enough of a tack, but I just want to make sure I had some redundancy. So I have this here, I machined this. All I gotta do is just kind of tack this in place, and that way I can start getting it fabbed up before I completely commit to welding the entire thing, just in case I need to take it apart. So I just tack welded this, put the joint on, and then this is gonna go on the steering rack side of the column. Went ahead and got the joint in. I got the steering column in this portion here. I painted the plate black, and then I went ahead and bolted that up there, so now that's at the proper angle, so that looks pretty nice. So now I just have to kind of line up where this is going to go here, and then cut the bottom shaft to length, so this will be at the correct angle there. All right, the whole steering column is in. All I need to do is machine the plate for the quick release here and then weld that on, and then I can weld all these in place. But I don't want to do that until I can permanently affix this in here. But just got to set the angle here once I have the seat in, which is super easy. 4 Allen key bolts right there. Everything else is all ready to go. It's super rigid. Like, you can like move the whole car. It's not even welded in. It's going to be great with the Y-Fab and everything. So one of the things I'm going to need to do is I'm going to have to put this car on a trailer, but I don't have any front suspension on this car. And I have this on rollers, but that's just a frame that just kind of the car sits on. That won't really sit well on a trailer. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make something for the front to add caster wheels permanently to the front of the car. Well, not permanently removable, but bolted on. So what I did was I got some steel. This is 3 inch by 2 inch, drilled a 1/2 inch hole in it, and this is about 4 inches long. And what I'm doing here is this is the subframe where the suspension bolts up. So I went ahead and put one of these in, dropped a bolt through it. So this is where the lower control arm picks up. Then I have this 3.5 by 3.5 square steel that's going to be welded to the bottom of this, go across the side, and then I have these, which are high load 1,000-pound capacity caster wheels that are going to go on the bottom. So then I can bolt that entire assembly that I make into the subframe, and I can roll my car around with the back wheels on the ground and the front wheels. I don't need any sort of suspension because that will take place of the suspension. All right, both of these are both bolted in and lined up. I took this beam and I went ahead and jacked it up, so the car is like slightly jacked up on this right here, and I measured it all out, took a hammer and kind of like tapped it into place so it's all nice and even. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tack this and then just weld the entire piece. All welded up in there. So next what I did was I took the caster wheel, I jacked this up, and I just clamped it to where it's gonna be welded to right here. And I'm just gonna lay a bead on either side and then on there. Both sides welded in. Gonna let this down. All right, so the next thing I need to do on this, I need to remove the brakes. I need to remove the brake booster and all those lines, and then I can go ahead and take the motor and transmission and assemble it and put it in here, which I should be able to do in like about a night, maybe an afternoon or something. And then that way I can load it up on the trailer and bring it down to Bell Raceworks, and he can start on all his fab work. That being said, that's gonna wrap it up for this video. So thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, comment. Peace.